There is a kind of quiet that comes after a storm, and then there is the silence that is the storm. This is the final silence of the empath. It isn't a peaceful, meditative quiet. It's a heavy, weighted silence that fills the room, presses on your chest, and makes the air thick. Your phone lies on the table, a dark, inert rectangle, but your body hasn't gotten the message. Your nervous system still hums with a phantom readiness, waiting for the notification that used to be the drumbeat of your life, the ping that meant you were needed, the angry text that required your immediate emotional firefighting, the desperate call that only you could answer. Now, there is nothing. And in that nothing, a war begins inside you. One part of you feels a flicker of something forbidden, relief, a fragile, exhausted peace. But another, much louder part, is screaming. It's the voice of guilt, thick and suffocating. It tells you that you are being cruel, cold, punitive. It shows you images of their confusion, their pain, their loneliness. It whispers that you have abandoned them, that you are a bad person for finally putting down the weight that was crushing you. This silence is not a tactic. You've tried tactics before. You've tried explaining, reasoning, pleading. You've tried setting soft boundaries that were crossed before the words even left your mouth. You've tried giving less, only to give double the next time to make up for it. This is different. This is the silence of absolute depletion, the silence of a well that has run dry. It came not from a place of strength, but from a place of collapse. You didn't choose this silence with a clear, strategic mind. Your soul chose it for you. Your body, your psyche, simply could not endure one more cycle. And so you sit in this new, terrifying quiet. It feels like holding your breath. You find yourself rehearsing the explanation you will never send. You type out long, articulate messages in your notes app and then delete them, one by one, because you know, on some deep, intuitive level, that to speak now is to reopen the door to the very dynamic that hollowed you out. They might call it the silent treatment. They might call it ghosting. They might paint you as the villain, the one who is unstable and punishing. And a part of you believes them, because for so long, your identity was tied to being the good one, the understanding one, the one who never gives up on people, the one who absorbs the chaos and turns it into calm. Now, you are just silent. And in that silence, you are forced to meet the person you have become, a stranger to yourself, defined only by your relationship to someone else's emotional weather. The question that haunts the quiet hours of the night is not, will they ever contact me? The question that truly terrifies you is, without them to react to, who am I? This is not just the end of a conversation. This is the collapse of a world. And what you may not realize, sitting in the rubble, is that this collapse is not your destruction. It is the violent, necessary beginning of your creation. The deeper truth, the one that is almost too uncomfortable to face, is that your empathy, your beautiful capacity for connection, had become entangled in a pattern that was slowly erasing you. It wasn't just that you were giving, it was that your very sense of self-worth had become dependent on being the giver, the fixer, the emotional caretaker. This dynamic, often seen in connections with narcissistic or highly manipulative patterns, is not a simple case of a good person meeting a bad person. From a psychological perspective, particularly a Jungian one, it's a lock and key mechanism. Your empathy, your desire to heal and understand, became the perfect key for a lock that needed constant validation, control, and emotional supply. You thought you were offering love, but you were actually supplying fuel. You thought you were being patient, but you were eroding your own boundaries. You thought you were seeing their hidden potential, but you were projecting your own goodness onto a screen where it was not being received or reciprocated. Carl Jung spoke of the persona. The persona is the mask we present to the world. For the empath caught in this cycle, the persona is that of the infinite well, the saintly, patient, all-forgiving healer. You were praised for it. You were told how kind, how strong, how understanding you were. And this praise felt good. It became the foundation of your identity in that relationship. I am the one who can handle them. I am the one who understands their pain. But every persona has a shadow. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is everything we deny about ourselves. And for the infinite well, the shadow contains everything that was sacrificed to maintain that mask. It contains the exhaustion you swallowed, the resentment that you told yourself was unspiritual, the anger that you labeled as unkind. It holds the desperate, screaming need to be seen, to be cared for, to have your own cup filled for once. For years, you kept that shadow locked away. You told yourself that your needs didn't matter as much, that your exhaustion was just selfishness, that your anger was a moral failing. You did everything you could to be the good person, but the psyche always seeks balance. When the shadow is repressed for too long, it doesn't just disappear, it builds up pressure. Your final silence was not a conscious choice. It was a shadow eruption. It was the moment the dam broke. The exhaustion, resentment, and primal need for self-preservation finally overwhelmed the persona. The infinite well ran dry, and the silence that followed was the sound of the shadow finally saying, "No more." This is why the guilt is so overwhelming. The guilt is the persona fighting for its life. It's the good person mask telling you that you have failed at your one job, to be endlessly accommodating. The guilt you feel is not an accurate measure of your morality. It is the withdrawal symptom from an identity that was killing you. It is the sound of the old chains breaking. The other person in this dynamic might be in a state of confusion or rage. They have lost their primary source of regulation. They press the button that used to dispense empathy, and for the first time, nothing comes out. Their reaction, whether it's anger, feigned victimhood, or a sudden flood of love bombing, is not about you. It is about a system that has suddenly been disrupted. They are trying to reboot the old program. They are trying to get you to put the good person mask back on. And this is the first great test of your silence. Can you sit with the discomfort of their reaction without rushing in to manage it? Can you allow them to have their feelings, even if those feelings are accusations against you, without sacrificing your own newfound peace? Can you understand that their panic is a sign that the dynamic was just as unhealthy for them as it was for you, albeit in a different way? This is where the journey shifts from being about them to being profoundly about you. The silence is not a waiting game. It is not a strategy to make them miss you or to win them back. To view it that way is to remain trapped in the same paradigm, just with a different tactic. The true purpose of this silence is to create a sacred, empty space, a vacuum. For years, every ounce of your psychic energy was directed outward, monitoring their moods, anticipating their needs, managing their reactions. There was no space left for you. Now, that space exists. It's terrifyingly empty at first. It echoes with the ghosts of old conversations and the sharp sting of guilt. But this emptiness is the most fertile ground you have ever had. This is the ground where you can finally begin the process Carl Jung called individuation. Individuation is the journey of becoming a whole, integrated individual. It's the process of differentiating yourself from the roles you play, the expectations of others, and the unconscious patterns that have run your life. It is the journey from being a key that fits someone else's lock to becoming a complete, self-contained entity. For the empath, individuation often begins with the painful but necessary act of building a boundary. Your final silence is that first, monumental boundary. It is a declaration to the universe, and more importantly, to your own psyche, that you are no longer willing to dissolve into another person. Think of it like this. For years, you were like water, pouring yourself into whatever container they provided. You took their shape, filled their empty spaces, and had no form of your own. Your silence is the act of drawing all that water back. It is the first moment of refusing to be poured out. The next step of individuation is to build your own container. This process is not about becoming cold or heartless. That is the fear-based narrative of the persona. It is about integrating your shadow. It is about acknowledging the anger and resentment not as evil, but as vital life force energy. Your anger was a signal that your boundaries were being violated. Your resentment was a signal that your needs were being ignored. By labeling them bad, you silenced your own internal alarm system. Integrating the shadow means learning to listen to these signals with respect. It means understanding that anger can be a clean, powerful force for change when it is not repressed. It means allowing yourself to say, "I am exhausted," without adding, "and that makes me selfish." It means learning that a no to someone else can be the most profound yes to yourself. This is uncomfortable work. It means letting go of the good person identity that earned you so much validation, even as it drained you. It means being willing to be misunderstood. It means finding a new source of self-worth that is not based on how useful you are to others, but on your own intrinsic being. In the silence, you will start to hear things, not from them, but from you. You will hear the faint whisper of a long-neglected hobby. You will feel the pull toward a creative project you abandoned. You will notice the simple pleasure of a quiet cup of tea, a walk in nature, a song that makes you feel alive. All things that were crowded out by the noise of the old dynamic. These are the first shoots of your individuated self, growing in the new, quiet space. At first, they will feel small and insignificant compared to the high drama, high-intensity validation of the old connection. The nervous system can become addicted to chaos. The adrenaline of the fight and reconcile cycle can be mistaken for passion. The peace that follows can feel like boredom or loneliness. This is the second great test, to tolerate the peace, to stay with the quiet even when it feels empty, to nurture these small, new shoots of selfhood without needing them to be a grand, dramatic production. It's about recalibrating your system to find joy, not in crisis, but in stability. The silence also forces you to confront the deeper wound that made you a perfect key in the first place. This is where we look at what Jung called complexes. A complex is a cluster of emotionally charged thoughts, feelings, and memories in the unconscious, usually stemming from early life experiences. For many empaths, a powerful abandonment complex, or a rescuer complex, is at play. Perhaps early in life, you learn that your value came from being helpful, from being the good child who never caused trouble. Maybe you learned that love was conditional and had to be earned by taking care of a parent's emotional needs. This early pattern then lies dormant in the unconscious. When you meet a person who triggers this complex, the attraction can feel faded, magnetic, like you've known them forever. What you are actually recognizing is a familiar emotional landscape. The unconscious says, "Ah, I know this role. This is where I get to be the rescuer, the good one, and finally earn the love and validation I've always craved." The problem is, you are replaying an old script with a new actor, hoping for a different ending. But the script itself is the problem. The final silence is the moment you rip the script to shreds. And the pain you feel is the grief for that long-held hope. The hope that this time, by being good enough, patient enough, loving enough, you could finally heal the original wound. The profound and difficult truth is that no one else can heal that wound for you. Another person cannot give you the self-worth that you did not receive. They can only activate the wound over and over again. The healing can only happen within. It happens when you turn your powerful empathy inward. It happens when you start to parent the part of you that feels unworthy or abandoned. It happens in the silence. When you sit in the quiet and the urge to break the silence arises, ask yourself, what am I really feeling right now? Is it genuine concern for them, or is it my own unbearable anxiety? Is it love, or is it the terror of being alone? Am I missing them, or am I missing the role I played? This is the work of individuation. It is painstaking. It is not a quick fix. It is the slow, deliberate process of untangling your identity from the roles you have played. It's like finding a single thread in a massive, knotted ball of yarn, and slowly, patiently beginning to pull. As you do this, something remarkable begins to happen. The silence starts to change its quality. The heavy, guilty weight begins to lift. The terrifying emptiness starts to feel like spaciousness. The quiet is no longer the sound of absence, but the sound of presence, your own. You begin to build your own container. Your no becomes firmer, less apologetic. Your yes becomes more authentic, given from a place of fullness rather than obligation. You start to trust your own body. When you feel that old, familiar drain in someone's presence, you recognize it not as a call to action, but as a signal to protect your energy. This is the true meaning of becoming cold, as others might see it. It is not a closing of the heart. It is the development of a discerning heart. It is the wisdom to know that you cannot pour from an empty cup, and that your primary responsibility is to keep your own cup full. It is the integration of the shadow's protective instinct with the empath's capacity for love. The result is not coldness, but wholeness. If this process names something you have felt but never been able to articulate, take a moment to acknowledge that. This is not about blaming yourself for the past. It is about understanding the mechanics of your own beautiful, complex psyche, so that you can navigate the future with more wisdom and self-possession. What happens to the other person in this scenario? This is the question the ego desperately wants answered. Will they regret it? Will they realize what they lost? Will they come back, changed and apologetic? From the perspective of individuation, these questions are a distraction. They pull you right back into the old dynamic of focusing on the other. The goal of this journey is not to get a specific reaction from them. The goal is to become so grounded in your own self that their reaction becomes irrelevant to your peace. If they do try to re-engage, they will not meet the same person. They will not find the open door, the endless well, the immediate emotional service. They will meet a boundary. They will meet a person who is centered in their own energy, who no longer needs their validation to feel worthy. They will meet a person who has learned that true love, for self and others, cannot exist without respect, and respect cannot exist without boundaries. Whether they can handle this new version of you is not your responsibility. Your only responsibility is to remain true to it. And if they never come back, if your final silence truly is final, the process of individuation prepares you for this too, because you have been using that time not to wait by the window, but to furnish the rooms of your own soul. You have been so busy discovering your own thoughts, your own passions, your own strength, that their absence is no longer a gaping wound. It is simply space that you have now filled with yourself. The pain of the initial silence is the price of admission to your own life. It is the shedding of a skin, the breaking of a spell. It is the moment you stop being a supporting character in someone else's chaotic story and start becoming the author of your own. The journey from the persona of the good empath to an individuated self is the hero's journey for the sensitive soul. It demands that you walk through the fire of guilt, the loneliness of the unknown, and the grief for a dream that could never be. But what you find on the other side is not a reward. It is not the return of the other person. It is the return of you. You find a quiet confidence that isn't loud or arrogant. You find an empathy that is wiser, deeper, and no longer self-destructive. You find a strength that isn't about how much you can carry for others, but about how well you can hold your own center. The silence was the end of the illusion. It was the end of the hope that you could save someone else. But it was the beginning of the profound, lifelong journey of saving yourself. It was the moment you finally stopped waiting for someone else to see you, and you turned around and saw yourself for the first time. My silence is not a weapon. It is the sound of my return to myself. And in seeing yourself, you begin to feel yourself, perhaps for the first time in years. This is the body memory layer of your healing, a dimension that exists beneath thought and emotion. For as long as you were in the dynamic, your body was a fortress under siege. Your shoulders carried the tension of their next crisis. Your jaw was clenched in anticipation of the next argument. Your stomach was a knot of anxiety, trying to digest their indigestible moods. Your breathing was shallow, a constant state of readiness for fight, flight, or freeze. This somatic armor doesn't just disappear when the silence begins. In fact, in the initial quiet, you might feel it more acutely. The phantom limb of anxiety still twitches. You might find yourself bracing for impact when the phone rings, even if it's just a friend. This is your body's memory, the cellular echo of trauma. It learned that interaction equaled danger, that connection equaled a loss of self. The individuation process is also a somatic one. It is the slow, conscious act of teaching your body that it is safe. It happens when you deliberately unclench your jaw. It happens when you take a full, deep breath and feel your belly expand, signaling to your vagus nerve that the threat has passed. It happens when you consciously drop your shoulders and release the phantom weight you've been carrying. This isn't just a metaphor, it's a physiological shift. You are discharging years of stored cortisol and adrenaline from your tissues. You are literally unwinding the trauma from your body. The concrete signs of this return are not grand or theatrical. They are small, sacred, and intensely personal. It's the moment you notice the taste of your coffee, truly taste it, without your mind rehearsing a future conversation or replaying a past hurt. It's the sudden awareness of the warmth of sunlight on your skin, and the realization that you haven't felt it in years because you were too busy living inside your head, inside their world. It's the change in your internal monologue, the voice of the good person persona, the one that constantly berated you for not being patient enough, kind enough, or forgiving enough begins to lose its volume. In its place, a quieter, more compassionate voice emerges. This is the voice of the integrated self. When you feel tired, it doesn't call you lazy, it suggests you rest. When you feel sad, it doesn't call you dramatic, it allows you the grace of your grief. This is the true harvest of your shadow work. Integrating the shadow isn't about becoming an angry or resentful person. It's about reclaiming the life-preserving energy that your anger and resentment were trying to give you. The integrated shadow is the source of your discernment. It's the part of you that can now feel a situation and say, "This is not good for me," without needing a logical explanation or external validation. It's the part of you that can say no without a tremor in your voice. Because that no is not an attack on the other person, it is the sacred act of protecting your own inner sanctuary. It's the part of you that finally understands that you have a right to take up space, to have needs, and to prioritize your own well-being without apology. And then comes a day you may have dreaded, a moment that feels like the final exam for all this inner work, the late practical test. This isn't a test you study for, it's one that life simply hands you. You might be in a grocery store or a coffee shop or walking down the street and you see them. The old you would have had an immediate, visceral reaction, a jolt of adrenaline, a hot flush of shame or fear, a sudden spike of cortisol that makes your heart pound and your vision narrow. Your body would have instantly prepared for a confrontation, a plea, or an escape. Your entire nervous system would have been hijacked by their presence. But now, something different happens. There is a flicker of recognition, yes, but it's not followed by the tidal wave of chaos. Instead, there is a breath. A quiet, grounding breath that you don't even have to think about. Your feet feel solid on the ground. You don't feel the urge to run and hide, nor the compulsive pull to go over and fix things. You observe them, almost as if you were watching a character in a film you once saw. You might feel a pang of sadness for the whole story, a whisper of the old pain, but it's no longer a consuming fire. It's an ember you can look at without getting burned. You are no longer in the story. You are the observer of it. In that moment, you realize you have a choice. You can nod politely and keep walking. You can offer a neutral, civil greeting. You can do whatever feels authentic to your newfound center. The power lies not in what you choose to do, but in the fact that you have a choice. You are no longer a puppet on a string, reacting to their presence. You are a sovereign being, grounded in your own body, in your own peace. Passing this test isn't about winning the encounter. It's about the profound, world-altering realization that the encounter no longer has power over you. You have finally, truly, come home to yourself. This experience solidifies the final, crucial understanding of this journey. Your empathy was never the problem. Your beautiful, sensitive nervous system was never the flaw. The issue was that your empathy was untrained, unconscious, and porous. It was a superpower without an operating manual, leaving you vulnerable to being drained and manipulated. The individuation process is the act of writing that manual. The silence, the shadow work, the bodily reconnection, these are the chapters. You learn that empathy without boundaries is self-abandonment. You learn that you can have a deep, compassionate understanding of another person's pain without taking it on as your own responsibility to fix. You evolve from a reactive empath, who automatically absorbs the emotional state of a room, to a sovereign empath, who can choose when to extend their energy and when to preserve it. Your heart is not colder, it is wiser. It is no longer an open door for anyone to walk through, but a sacred space with a discerning gatekeeper, you.